Okay. Hey, Book Dragons. It is your girl Lindsay with another episode of the Spine Bookcast Chronicles of a Bookshop. I have a really awesome guest today. His name is Dan Klefstad, and he wrote Fiona's Guardian about a vampire. And the cover is just stupid awesome. I can't wait to introduce you guys, and you guys should all read it. Dan, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Lindsay. It's wonderful to be speaking with you. And hey, can I just say something?
Sure.
On behalf of readers, just on behalf of the reading community and the author community, I want to sincerely thank you for all of your efforts to fight book banning in Rutherford County, Tennessee, and elsewhere. I mean, if you're fighting book banning in one place, one locality, you're doing it nationally. And I really just applaud your efforts, and I just want to say thank you so much for what you're doing.
You're so welcome. I just I look at my bookshelf with all of the authors that I've cultivated and gotten into the bookshop, and I've read most of them, and I just kind of mentally go, that would be banned. That would be banned. That would be banned. That would be banned. All of that, that whole shelf, and
Right.
I think about that. I'm like, the fact that none of well, that people wouldn't be able to read those books, it's just no, we're not doing. And besides, I don't think that anybody should be able to have the right to tell people what they can and can't read.
Agreed. I mean, that yes, and because that whole diversity of experience that we're talking about, the book banners are trying to silence difference, and I feel that's an extremely dangerous thing to do, and it does speak to the kind of semi-dangerous or increasingly dangerous moment that we're in now.
Oh, absolutely. So, like, I was talking to somebody the other day about 1984 and how they have the thought police. And so, like,
Yes.
all the TVs have the little camera in it so that, like they'll see your face and you have to. And I remember thinking I would be picked up that fast. I can't school my face. My face says what my face is going to say. And the thought police would have me, and I would just be like, you know what? Don't brainwash, just kill me. Just give me, because it's not going to change. Just let's just skip to the end. You can
Um,
do all the brainwashing. You're going to just go ahead and kill me. Just let's just make it real
yeah.
simple. No,
Yeah, I would be in a similar position.
yeah, like you're not going to brainwash me into thinking that this is three. That's not what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for that compliment. I really appreciate it. It's not something I set out to do, but it's kind of where we are. So, here we are.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's get into it. How did you get into reading?
Oh, it was initially my mother reading stories to me, and then she would buy books. I remember reading the Frog and Toad
I
books, and
love
also Charlotte's.
those.
Yeah, yeah. And then Charlotte's Web. I remember reading that and just crying at the end. Why does she have to
I know,
die? Like,
right?
yeah. And then in high school, well, we read books like 1984 and
Mhm.
Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And
Oh,
then when I got into college, I started reading other things. This is more what I wanted to read, and that was Albert Camus, and talking about the absurdity of existence and how you
right.
embrace absurdity. If you embrace absurdity, you will sort of get along and have find a way to exist with other people.
Sure.
And stuff like that interested me. But by this time, also in college and late in high school, I was reading vampire tales. Stephen
Mhm.
King's Salem's Lot, Anne Rice, her earliest novels, Interview and The Vampire Lestat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's where I started becoming interested in Gothic horror, including
Sure.
vampires.
My first gothic
Yeah.
horror, I think, was Frankenstein, or maybe Edgar Allan Poe. I can't remember, but I remember reading them and going, "What the hell am I
Yeah.
reading?"
Yeah,
And,
especially with Mary Shelley.
oh,
She, she, I don't know where she could have gotten those ideas. I mean, there's some life experience that we talk about, the death of a
sure,
daughter,
sure, sure.
but yeah, but still, to come up with a novel that is considered to be the first true Gothic horror
Mhm.
novel and also the first science fiction novel
Oh, I know, right?
says a lot about. Yeah.
So I tell this story a lot. So my English teacher, who's my very first podcast episode, Mrs. Rose, she always tells me, "You can call me Catherine now. You're an adult." No, ma'am. I will call you Mrs. Rose to the day that I die because no, I'm not, no. But so when she introduced us to Edgar Allan Poe, and we read The Telltale Heart. I was just, oh my God, I love this book so much. And so it was right around Christmas time. So she had a tree in the classroom. She's like, this is your assignment. If you want extra credit, you have to bring me an ornament based on something from Edgar Allan Poe. So people were bringing in like brick walls and hearts and crows and, okay. My weird ass decides to make the eyeball. So I took a styrofoam ball and painted it
Yeah.
like this pussy yellow color and dripped wax on
Awesome.
it so that it was all, puffy and swollen, right? And then I painted this eyeball on it that looked like cataratic and just nasty and
Yeah.
gnarly looking, and then drew little red veins on it and then put big red streamers out the back to look like the and so everybody's
Yeah.
bringing her all this beautiful stuff and I hand her my pussy bloody looking eyeball. And Mrs. Rose by this point knew me because it was my senior year, and she just kind of goes, "Of course, of course."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she
Did she
hung
give you
out.
an A?
She did. And so what's so
Yeah.
funny
Yeah. Yeah.
is so she later became principal of the school and had this
Mhm.
eyeball sitting in her office
Oh, wow.
where everyone could
That's
see
quite an
it.
honor.
I did not
Yeah.
know she did that. I love that. But she said that students would come in and she could tell the minute that they saw it because it was
Mhm.
this look of the fuck is that? She's like, oh, that was my last student's eyeball. And you could see she said, you could tell they weren't sure if I was joking. I was
Right.
because it was her favorite ornament. I was like, it's so gross. I love it. So yeah, no, I love gothic horror that has that effect on people like me, where you go, I
Mm,
don't want to do a heart. I want to do a pussy, bloody, nasty eyeball.
mm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Embrace the dark side,
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that that's such an untapped emotion to read that kind of stuff and just be like, I'm into it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that plays into our
Uh,
lore with vampires.
it does because we are kind of getting into an area where we're exploring death. What does it mean? And also what it means to live beyond death if you
Hmm.
have that kind of imagination and what that how you survive in a world where you're supposed to be dead but you're not.
Hmm. I would do so much stupid crap if I were a vampire. Like, I would not do fun stuff. I would do dumb shit, like go to Comic-Con and
Yeah.
go visit every stupid thing that I've ever wanted to go see. Everybody's like, oh, I would do that. No, I would go to do dumb stuff. I'd go to concerts and I would like
Yeah.
totally seduce all the people that I wanted to seduce so I could hang out with them. Like, I would do just the dorkiest crap ever.
And then suck their blood because you have to eat.
Yeah,
A
because you
girl's
gotta.
got to eat, right?
So let's talk about your book. So
Okay.
your, I want to make sure I have the right protagonist is a woman, right?
Yes. Fiona is a 250-year-old vampire. She was turned in County Waterford, Ireland, and has for the last 30 or 40 years been living in the United States.
Okay.
And she learned long ago that if she hired people to arrange for her blood supply, she wouldn't have murder police showing up at her doorstep during the
Okay.
daytime when she's asleep. So initially, she hired, in the early 20th century, she hired a big fella to subdue her victims and then drag them to her, and then he would take the victim away. But in the
Sure.
1920s, blood donation becomes a thing, and she found that she could hire people on the inside of hospitals to supply blood, and then eventually by contemporary times, she has a chief guardian named Daniel who arranges her blood supply across the country. People in hospitals everywhere who steal just a little bit of blood, not enough to be
Sure.
noticed. And by the way, Fiona's favorite is O negative. It's just a taste thing.
That's, I'm either
And
a
she has
positive
to
or
have,
a negative.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I also the important thing is she has to have 10 pints of human blood per night, or soon she'll start to decay again. So
Okay.
she has to. that's how she survives.
Okay.
And at one point in the book, she does say this to someone she's interviewing for a job, somebody who wants to be her next guardian. I am in the business of surviving,
I
and that's her
love that line.
whole.
I
Yeah,
heard that
thanks.
on the podcast that you did with oh, what was it? I listened to it yesterday and I can't remember what it was. I
Probably
just
Steven Zimmer and Holly Philippi, the Star Chamber Show
That's the
podcast.
one. I loved
Hmm.
that line so much. I am in the business of surviving. I have become I in the last couple of years I've started picking up on lines that just like when you hear them you have to sit there and think about it, and that was one of those. I am in the
Oh,
business of
good. Thank
surviving, and I just it hit me and I was like that's such a great quote. Oh my God.
you.
So I really loved that. I thought that was a great line.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was kind of proud of it when I came up with it. Sometimes writers have these aha moments when that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I will finish this book. You know.
I have a poet named Andy Kopic, and so I suffer from depression and anxiety, right? And so he is, God, I want
I've
to.
met Andy.
Oh yeah, okay. So you know Andy, he's
Mhm.
Ukrainian and Polish, right? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
knew about his Polish background. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So you know the book that he wrote, Shinaron.
Hmm.
I don't think I
Yeah.
have that
I,
right.
I,
Yeah. But so the poem, the one poem, it's just, oh my God, let me, my book. It's the hearing, I think, or the healing. What is that poem called? Not important. Anyway, the first line of the poem is, I'm a victim of my own mind. And when I
yeah.
read
And
that, it put me on my ass because I just was like, holy crap. And so I was talking to him about it in the very first podcast, which I think is going to arrive today. And I was talking to him about it. And he said that his inspiration for that poem was Invictus, which is my favorite poem ever. Like my
okay.
husband
Yeah.
had it
Yeah.
calligraphied for me because it's my favorite poem. Because the last two lines, I'm the master of my fate and the captain of my soul. So when I realized
Mhm.
that I was just like, dude, so I'm working on a tattoo. And I told him this. I said, I'm working on a tattoo where I'm going to take that line and combine it with I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. And I'm going to work it around. So I did this art piece when I first got diagnosed because I was trying to just work through my feelings about it. And so
Yeah.
it's about 12 by 11. It has this beautiful, colorful background, but it has my silhouette where I took a picture and blew it up and I painted my silhouette in solid black. And so one side has this very inky, liquidy, shiny, oil spill like side with these spikes that are about this big that I made coming out of it. So it's very much like,
Oh. Yeah.
and then the other side of it fades into these black cotton balls that looks like a thunderclap.
Wow.
So my anxiety,
Yeah.
depression, right? So I told him, I said, I'm going to have my tattoo artist design like a cloud with spikes, and I'm going to
Mm,
those three lines around it somehow.
that is cool.
Yeah,
Oh, I
and
can't wait to see that.
it just hit me,
Yeah,
and
post it on Instagram, you know?
yeah, oh, I will
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I had that same feeling when I heard you say that about I'm in the business of surviving. It was just like, holy crap, that is a line, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because for in my universe, I do borrow some tropes that other authors or filmmakers have used. The vampires are vulnerable to certain
Sure,
forces or phenomena. So in my novel, vampires burn up very quickly if exposed to the sun.
sure.
They have to sleep during the daytime, and also the one where I think I actually came up with it, and I have not seen this elsewhere, is that if they don't get enough blood, they begin to decay and actually
Mm.
smell like
You
human
don't make them
putrefaction.
sparkly, right? No sparkles.
No sparkles, although I see why that works. I see
Oh,
why that
no,
is an attractive
absolutely.
trope. Absolutely, yeah. But for me, I was this my novel is not a romance, and I'm not very good at writing romance. But
Sure.
I did write something that I think is kind of a mix of gothic horror and a bit of film noir. Sort of death of the American dream
Mhm.
mixed in with a criminal underworld and a constant searching for something that is permanent and real.
Can I
Um,
also say that I've read a bunch of vampire books, and usually the vampire books are from the male perspective, and yours is on my list to read. I just
mhm,
haven't had a chance yet, so I apologize. But I love
mhm.
that your vampire is female because it's so
You could
rare that
say
I've
she's
read.
an alpha. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's almost like an alpha female. She's large and in charge. She does, she has a bunch of humans who work for her,
Hmm.
and a lot of them don't even know about the others. So there's this
Right.
almost like this underworld that she's sort of created,
Hmm.
and yeah, she also, to keep loyalty among her folks, her guardians, she of course pays them very well, but
Sure.
and she protects them, but she's
Sure.
also magnetic sexually,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so there's a she can use that kind of magnetism to sway people to do her bidding, especially if it's a really difficult
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
job where they may have to kill someone, you
Sure.
know.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I have to ask because I know you and I kind of
Mhm.
talked about it the other day, but what is your all-time favorite vampire movie?
Movie. I've been watching so many of them lately, but I'm going to say all-time favorite. How about we'll divide them into comedy and a more serious kind of film.
Okay.
And if it's comedy, it's the 1985 Fright Night. Um,
Yes.
yes.
I love that movie so much.
Mm, I do too. I was in high school when that came out. I remember it, and gosh, that I'm reminded that August 2nd will be the 40th anniversary of that film,
Well, I don't
which is
appreciate
kind of
that
amazing.
math. I don't appreciate that math. Don't appreciate that at all. I feel attacked.
I guess I just attacked myself too, and everybody around me. Sorry for the collateral. Sorry for the collateral damage there,
No.
Betsy. But when it comes to more serious films, um, Let the Right One In comes to mind. This is
I
the
don't like that
2008
movie.
Swedish. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do.
Hmm.
I err on the side because I've read the book
Sure.
that it was based on, and the book is even
Well,
more horrific.
and I've seen the
Go ahead.
Swedish movie. I
Yeah.
saw the Swedish movie and it was just like, I just don't think this is my vibe, you know?
Yeah, it's dark and in a very Scandinavian kind of way,
Sure.
so but it's one I come to occasionally just to, go back to occasionally just to kind of immerse myself in that vibe a little bit because the storytelling is really good and the
No, it
characters
is.
are well drawn. Um, and the other one I guess I would point to is the 1979 Nosferatu, directed by Werner Herzog, starring Klaus Kinski and Isabella Gianni.
Sure.
That one was inspired. The director was inspired by German romantic or German romanticism, paintings from the early 19th century, and most of the shots in that film remind you of works from that period, which is really kind of neat.
Okay, so I love that you bring up Nosferatu. Okay, so I've seen the original black and white, like silent film,
Hmm.
right? Which chef's kiss. There, I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
but then now I haven't seen the one that you just mentioned, but then I've seen the new one, and I hate it. My best
A
friend
lot
loved
of
it,
my wife is not fond of it. Yeah,
but I
and my
was
wife feels like you do. I think about it.
I was
Is
just
because
bored.
bored. Okay. Yeah, I I still don't know. I'm still steeping in it. I'm
Okay,
still trying to figure out my feelings for it. So I think 10 years from now, it's going to be a well-respected film,
I get
especially in
that
Gothic
it's a
horror.
good movie. I
Hmm.
absolutely give
Yeah.
it props because they did a hell of a job. It was a beautiful film, absolutely. I think I
Mhm.
went into it thinking that it was going to be more, I don't know, not action packed. That's not the right word. But I think I expected something else, you
Well,
know?
I think a lot of people were surprised at just how much of a horror film it really
Mm.
is.
Yeah. Oh,
I
it
mean,
is.
way more than, yeah. I mean, if you're because most of us think Gothic horror, and we think it's kind of going to be a little bit less violent,
Yeah.
a little bit less like. intimately violent,
Yeah. Like especially when
where
instead of biting her in the neck, he does it here in her
yeah,
chest. That and you hear the noise. I will say
yeah,
that that was
yeah,
brilliant.
as his teeth are going through her breastbone, I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's something I
That
never would
was
have
really
thought of.
awesome. I will give it that. That
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
when I watched that, I was like, that's different, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm still thinking about it. I like Robert Eggers, the director. I thought his film The Witch remains one of the great horror
I
films,
don't know if I've
independent
ever
horror films.
seen that. I'm gonna write that down.
Uh, it's, I mean, I got to warn you, it's bleak, and the ending may confuse some folks. So I think that it takes time to kind of another one where you really need to take time with it, thinking about it and afterwards. And The Witch is an excellent film,
Sure.
and so I could totally see why Eggers became a very famous filmmaker after that, and why he took on a project like Nosferatu.
Okay. Is there a vampire book that you've read that has not been made into a movie that you would love to see made into a movie?
There are a few, I think. Let me think here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna launch softballs at you.
All right, okay. John Polidori's The Vampire, which is either a long short story or a novella, from 1819, which I believe is the first, or if not the first, one of the first English language stories about vampires.
Okay.
And his vampire is Lord Ruthven, who is based on Lord Byron.
I
Earlier,
didn't know
we were
that.
talking. Yeah, so he was Byron's friend and personal physician.
Okay.
And Polidori was at that famous Swiss Castle meeting when Lord Byron challenged Mary Shelley, John Polidori, and Percy Bysshe Shelley, and others who were present to write the scariest story. Mary Shelley, as we were talking about earlier, wrote Frankenstein.
Love it.
Polidori wrote The Vampire with a Pyre
Okay.
at the
Okay.
end, and that's
I've seen
and
that.
eventually
I've
published it.
seen that spelling. I think I've seen that. I
Yeah.
don't know if I've read it, but I think I've seen that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's kind of like an older English, and then it goes back to the German, I think, which is
Mhm.
Vampyr, Vampyr.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a really good story. 90% sure I've not that it hasn't been made into a film that I'm aware of. And
Okay.
correct us in the comments
Yeah, yeah.
if you've seen it,
Right.
and give us a link because I'd
Please,
love to see it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so I watched the new Nosferatu, right? And then I had a friend of mine who has not seen the Gary Oldman Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I made her come over and watch it because that is, for me, that is the pinnacle of Dracula. I think that that is so beautiful. And every time I hear Gary Oldman say, "I've crossed
Hmm.
oceans of time," just it puts me on the floor because it's like one of the greatest lines in film. And the fact that he did that movie just to say that one line is just superb.
Yeah. In that accent, I have crossed oceans of time
I
to
know. It
be
just
with
every
you.
time I hear it, I'm like, "Ah." Yeah, that's when it's
Yeah, and
here. Let me pop up a vein. Let me just get it going, right? But I
and he was
remember,
acting circles around everybody in that film.
oh my
I mean, he was
God.
so good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is the Gen X Dracula, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That is,
Well, and I remember
that's a,
watching that with my mom in the ending where Winona Ryder has to do sobbing because by the time they
oh,
get to
yeah.
that point, you want Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman. You're like, no, screw Keanu Reeves. Y'all just live in the castle together. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
it's
Yeah,
gut wrenching, especially because
yeah,
Keanu
yeah.
Reeves' character goes, no, 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 we're done here. It's her job. And I'm like, no. Uh,
Yeah, fabulous movie. I watch it every year around Halloween.
Oh, I love
And
that
the
movie
music.
so much.
Yeah, the music by I think it was Wojciech Kilar,
Hmm.
a Polish composer, just knocked it out of the park with his
Hmm.
score. So good.
And see, to me, I don't think that's a horror movie. To me, it's a love story, which may be a different
Right.
take.
I think the filmmakers Coppola and others consciously made it a love story, because
Mhm.
of course that's going to get more of an audience. And it is. It is a gothic horror romance, is how I would
Mhm.
describe it.
Yeah.
And it's got all the elements. It has the horror,
Oh
it
yeah.
has the romance, it's loaded with gothic atmosphere, and it
Mhm.
just hits all the buttons.
Yeah.
I mean, uh,
Now, for scary vampire movies, Salem's Lot will have me down every single time because of two scenes. Even in the book, even in the movie from like the 70s, that scene where the grave digger is like putting the dirt on the
yes,
coffin of Billy, I think.
it's
And
Danny
Danny,
Glick
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
And his
Mike
describing
Ryers.
seeing the eyes through the coffin. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Every time I read it, it gives me the heebie-jeebies and I have to go watch cartoons. And then the
yeah,
scene
yeah.
where Danny comes up and he's scratching at the window.
Hmm.
Every time
Yeah.
it gives me the willies so bad.
I mean, for 1979 television, that was, it actually had some pretty good production values because Toby Hooper was the
Yeah.
director. And Mr. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed that one. Yeah, so that was it. I have a very great fondness for that because I think I was 12 when I first saw
Me too. Like
when
I
it
was
came out.
really young.
Yeah, and it scared the hell out of me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and
So well done to all those guys for making that film.
I think too that Stephen King has this amazing ability, which I have to say most authors have not done for me. Like, but Stephen King always he gives you just enough to feed your imagination, and he goes, anyway, moving on, and goes on to something else while you're still sitting here going, oh my God. And then for the rest of the book, you can hear it scratching at the back of your brain. And you're just, I don't know if
Yeah,
I can finish reading this book because he doesn't
right,
gross you out. He just feeds the imagination just enough and then unleashes it. And your imagination takes
right.
over and goes worst case scenario, and then you have nightmares for a month. And it's the same thing with a lot of his movies. I loved that in that movie, it wasn't gory. It was
Right.
just
There was
suggestive enough.
very, yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, Stephen King, he is the master of horror, and for obvious reasons. But I think the point that you made really encapsulates it because it is about letting your imagination take over. He gives you
Mhm.
just enough information to where your brain starts to attack you.
Yes, it really,
You
really
know,
does.
and
The first time I watched Salem's Lot, it was raining, and it was obviously a
Mhm.
mistake of me to do that. And I literally, there was a tree that was brushing my window, right? And I heard it because I heard it on the TV when Danny Glick and I looked, I was like, okay, we're done with that. I'll just finish this tomorrow. We're good. I'm watching
Yeah,
Looney Tunes. I can't go to sleep. Have you seen the remake
right.
of Salem's Lot? Not the Rob Lowe one, but like the new one that just hit.
I have not, and I'm not eager to, based on the
Yeah,
reviews that I've heard.
me
Somebody,
too.
my co-host for the Vamp Chat podcast, Eva Vertrice, she saw it and she said it was an absolute waste of time. Don't see it. And
Really?
so yeah, yeah, and I've heard other reviewers say, no,
I've
not
been
good, not good.
curious about doing a watching party, like doing a podcast where
Mm,
me and a couple of people watch it and then just
mm,
film our reactions to it because I know a bunch of people love Salem's Lot. And as much as I love the 70s version, I would really love to have a good updated,
yeah,
because they screwed up Fright Night. Although Christopher
uh,
Sarandon
J-
in it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
which
yeah. I mean, he has
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a brief moment in it before
I
he gets
love when they
killed.
do that in movies. So
Yeah.
like in the TV show, so because I'm a 70s kid, I watched the original Westworld with
Oh yeah.
um
Yul Brynner.
thank you. And so if
Yeah,
you watch
yeah.
the TV show and you've watched the movie, okay,
Mhm.
and you're watching the TV show, there's a scene in the first season. I was watching it with my mom, and the guy's going down in the basement in the far corner, just
Mhm.
barely out of just, I mean, you can just see like this much of it. You see this mannequin that looks like Yul Brynner's character. And my mom and I were watching all of a sudden, holy shit, wait, rewind. Did you see that? Oh my God, that's Yul Brynner. But you wouldn't have known that
Right,
if you hadn't watched the
right,
movie. So I
right.
love when they
So,
have nods to previous movies. So like in the new Fright Night, you've got oh whatever his name, Colin Farrell as the
Colin
vampire.
Farrell. Yeah,
But you have Chris Sarandon for a brief cameo, and it was
exactly.
you hadn't
Yeah.
seen the original movie, you wouldn't know who that is. And I love that I know that Easter egg when I watch stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. Uh, Although I do think that the 2011 Fright Night, the one with Colin
Mm-hmm.
Farrell, yeah, I didn't like that one as much, but
Yeah.
for me, David Tennant was as the
Oh
character,
my,
the vampire hunter, uh, he was great, Peter Vincent.
he was
But that
fantastic.
Yeah, he was the strongest part of that whole film
Oh,
for me.
absolutely.
Uh, so it's okay. I think for that generation, it's a fine movie, but it'll never come up to the level of
Mm-mm.
the 1985 original.
No.
So
I
yeah.
remember I would think I was 13 or 14 when I saw that movie. And I
Hmm.
remember looking at Chris, I keep messing up his name, Sarandon.
Sarandon.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And he falls into that same category of David Bowie from The Labyrinth, George Michael,
Hmm.
Tom Selleck from Magnum PI, where I was about 13 or 14. I want one. I don't know what I want to do with
Uh-huh.
it, but I want one. That's really like, oh my
Yeah,
God, what is that? Like, why is that?
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they were kind of the next generation matinee idols, you could say,
Mm, mm,
Yeah, and absolutely. And Sarandon had quite a run there. I mean, he did obviously Fright Night, and then he was
mm.
the villain, Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride,
I
and he
cannot love
voiced,
that movie enough.
yeah, 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 and he voiced Jack Skellington, I believe, in the Tim Burton
Did he?
Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, I think that's Sarandon.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I hate that movie. The Ooby
You'll
Gooby
love it a
or
little more now.
the Ooby Gooby or Boogie Oogie,
Yeah,
Oogie Boogie, whatever that guy that
yeah. It's
can't. It just gives me the creeps so much.
yeah.
Just
Mm.
David, but you brought up David Tennant. Have you ever seen there's a movie that David Tennant did where he
Mhm.
plays a serial killer? And it was so menacing. And up to that point I had only seen him in like Doctor Who and that kind of stuff. And
Right,
I
right.
remember watching the movie going, "Oh I think it's it's Bad Samaritan where he plays a serial killer."
Okay.
And I
Mm.
remember watching that going, oh my God. Oh my God. Because he was so
Yeah.
like Hannibal Lecter level menacing that you just kind of
Mm.
feel like,
Oh,
I, holy crap, I don't think I can watch this. You know,
wow. Yeah.
it was
He's got range, David Tennant. He's got
freaky.
range.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, he was absolutely terrifying in that movie.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah. I'll have to
like
see it. I haven't seen
it's very, very, very good. It was just good Lord. But I
it.
like movies like that versus and I think vampire and werewolf movies are the exception to what I'm about to say, but like Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy or Fry,
Friday the 13th. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. You know, those kind of like the serial killer that won't die, those scare me because
Hmm.
jump scares. But the ones that get me down into my, like, I need to go watch cartoons are like the movies like Silence of the Lambs and the Good or the Bad Samaritan, the things that are based off of real horror stuff
Mm.
that like those are
Hmm.
actually possible. But see, I don't like movies
Yes.
like Hostel, which are considered like torture porn. I want a psychological thriller that just messes you up in your head.
Yeah, I like that too, actually.
Yeah,
And I don't need to see all the blood and gore.
I don't either.
If it helps advance the story or says something about the
Sure.
character, okay. But use it judiciously. Don't just splatterpunk is not
Mm-mm.
it doesn't really tell a story.
Yeah,
I think as much as it just has shock value. You
sure.
know.
Well, and the fact that there's an entire genre called torture porn, like the first time I watched Hostel and I realized what I was getting ready to watch, I was like, I don't I don't think that this is gross for no other reason than just being gross. And then you look at stuff
Yeah.
like The Strangers, which I had no idea
Hmm.
what I was getting into with that movie. You know, I just really liked Liv Tyler and I was like, "Oh yeah, horror movie. Okay." Holy crap. There's a song in there that the record player skips and plays it over, and it's just like a country song. And I did not think about it. I was like, oh my God, it's a creepy song, because it's a really horrible scene that happens in the song. And I went home to my mom's like a week or two later, and we were doing something in the art room, and that song comes on, and I immediately went, we need to skip that. We need to skip that song right now. I can't listen to that song. Holy crap. Oh,
Yeah,
because it was a
yeah,
psychological thriller because like they asked the killers, why are you doing this? And the simple answer is because you answered the door. Holy crap. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I love
That's
horror movies that
that's
do that.
real.
Yes, because you
Yeah,
answered the
yeah.
door.
Same here.
Like
Hmm.
so,
Yeah,
and I get off topic all the time. I'm really sorry. So
yeah.
what inspired your book, Fiona's Guardian? Like, because I mean, we're talking about horror movies and vampires, and again, I haven't read it. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to. It's on my list.
It's
But
fine.
what
Yeah.
inspired that story, and why a female?
Well, I had been reading a lot of stories with male vampires. So, Louis and Lestat,
Sure.
Dracula. We've got all these male characters. There are some female characters out there, but not that many. And I thought, well, I will try. I wanted to try writing from the perspective of a female, which is not an easy. It can be a little bit difficult for someone, but there's an author named Robert Halenga who published a novel in 2010 called the Snake Woman of Little Egypt. And Robert Halenga wrote from the perspective of a woman in that book. And I actually interviewed him a couple times when I was on the radio, when I had a radio program. And
Okay.
uh, he almost sort of gave me permission to try writing from the perspective of a female. And so I
Okay.
did this with one other novel that came out years ago. And I felt like I had learned a lot from that experience and decided, okay, I'm going to put myself in the mind of a 250-year-old vampire named Fiona. And as someone who, so she's in the driver's seat in terms of, making all the decisions.
Sure.
Every decision is either made by or approved by her. So she's the chief executive, if you will, of this network of people who are bringing in her blood supply. But also, she learns very quickly. We learn very quickly in the novel that they're being hunted down by an ancient organization, a Vatican hit squad, you could say, called Mors Strige. And
Okay.
they are dedicated to hunting down vampires and the humans who protect them. And the Mors Strige really kind of announces their presence in a chapter where they kill Fiona's sire,
Oh,
another female vampire named Agrippina. And so this begins, I think this is where the action really takes off. And
sure.
we have, I guess you could say, almost an adventure kind of story as she takes her revenge on the organization Borstrige, which she had
Dude,
last battled in the early 20th century.
sure,
So
sure.
they're
I
back.
think it's really funny to me that you have these, what should obviously be a bad guy, right?
Hmm.
Vampires and whatever, and
Yeah, yeah.
werewolves, whatever. The morally gray villain, if you will. And like I
Hmm.
am absolutely in my morally gray villain reading era, where I want to root
Hmm.
for the person who's like, no, 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 you looked at her funny. I'm going to burn your world to the ground and leave no action. Like that is the reading
Yeah, yeah.
type I'm in right now. But I know that I have watched movies and TV shows and read books that you get to the villain and you're like, I know this is a bad guy, but I really want them to
Mm.
win. Like when Negan came out in Walking Dead, I've read the comics. I knew
Uh-huh.
what Negan was going to do, but the minute Jeffrey Dean Morgan walked out of that door with the black leather jacket and the bat, I just thought, shit.
Hmm.
I am
Yeah. Oh,
morally
absolutely.
compromised. So,
Yeah. And I've always been attracted to, like you, the moral ambiguity. I guess I picked up a lot of this in spy novels that I was reading, when I was like 20, 30, 40 years ago.
sure, sure.
And John le Carre comes to mind as
Oh
an
yeah,
author who
for sure.
likes
I know who
to
that is.
explore that. Yeah. And so I focus on that a lot because, here we have a Catholic organization. And I'm not picking on any particular religion here, but I liked having the vampire hunters come within the Vatican because the Vatican or the Catholic Church is a hierarchy, kind
Sure.
of like the military, kind of like a corporation.
Sure.
And I felt that that kind of, the people at the top or even the middle managers of any one of those hierarchies I just mentioned, um, are maybe more easily corruptible because they
Oh,
are in positions of
absolutely. Yeah,
power.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but it's the foot soldiers at the bottom that where they're literally fighting for the person standing next to them on the left or the right. That's where I find these organizations have a true kind of humanistic value.
Sure.
And so I try to make it easy for the reader to like the vampire hunters, especially the ones on the ground doing
Yeah.
the hunting.
Mhm.
But the further up you go, the grayer it becomes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with the vampires. The same with the vampires that I created because they also have a family, if you will, and
Mhm.
it's a hierarchy, and
Mhm.
it's mostly male figures up at the top who are
Yeah,
running,
yeah.
calling the shots, and the females don't really have a lot of power in this ancient, kind of structure. And
Sure.
so um, Fiona is also rebelling against that in this novel, and
Okay.
so there's a lot of tension on a lot of
Sure.
different levels that I'm trying to create for the reader.
Well, earlier you talked about tropes and I know I've been writing my own book and stuff and so
Mhm.
when I was doing the ending of my book, I called a friend of mine. I was like, I have to write a really tropey ending, but it's the only way I can write the ending because this ending sets up the ending for book three and it has to happen this way, but it's tropey.
Mhm.
And I felt really bad about being like, okay, this is really tropey. But it was literally the only way it was going to work in my brain of how this was going to set up for the trilogy ending.
Mhm.
And we talked last night during book club about tropes, about how they're tropes for a reason, you know.
Mhm.
Um, do you find that there are some tropes for you that work better than others, or do you try to avoid falling into that trap with books? Because I mean, it's a vampire book. There's only so many things you can do, you know.
Right. So, you take everything from garlic, aversion to silver, sunlight,
Yeah, yeah,
holy
yeah.
water. Does that work? Do crucifixes work? Or should they, in a vampire story? I address all that. The one that I stay away from, that I don't even go near, is one that I think is better suited for comedy. And that is the trope that if you throw a bunch of tacks or marbles at a vampire, they will stop attacking you and very quickly get down on the ground and start counting the items that you've dropped. So it could be tacks, could be marbles, whatever
I
that's
have
small.
maybe heard that in
And
one other book.
yeah, yeah. And I think it works brilliantly in a comedy.
Sure.
They are absolutely obsessed and have to pick those items up and count them,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that allows the potential victim to escape, of course. But in a that's one is that if I were going to write a comedy, a vampire comedy, that's one I would include
Mhm.
absolutely. And I don't even know where that comes from or how long that's been around, but I
I
think
don't either.
it's probably Balkan or maybe Austro-Hungarian, maybe
For
where
sure.
that originates. Mm, yeah.
Um, who do you think in movies and TV shows? I'm really curious to see what you think. Who do you think's played the best Dracula? Not like
Okay.
Lestat or anything like that, but specifically Dracula.
Okay. I have some thoughts on that, and I'm not. It's not a cop out for me to say that I love each one of them,
Sure, no,
of the major
absolutely.
ones that we're
I
talking
do
about.
too.
Whether it's Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, Frank Langella, who
Uh-huh.
memorably played that role,
So
or
good.
Gary Oldman. Yeah. So what I'm going to suggest is Gary Oldman is probably certainly the best because he did so much work.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
did the dialect coaching that he went through.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was something that really, I think, set him apart from all the others. But
Absolutely.
I will, yeah, but I will say those actors who've portrayed the role on stage get special love from me as well. And
Sure.
it's notable that Bela Lugosi played the role on Broadway in starting in 1927, I
Okay.
think, and then 1920 and up to about 1928, and then the Universal film director producer Todd Browning saw him on Broadway and said, "I want that guy for the film,"
Sure, sure,
which
sure.
he eventually did. And the other actor who portrayed the role on stage during a revival, a 1970s revival of Dracula on Broadway, was Frank Langella, who played the
Okay.
role, I think, starting in '77. And by 1979, he was in a film directed by John Badham that's set in Whitby, I think, or it looks like it is. And that's a not a perfect film, but he's very good in it.
Sure.
And so is Kate Nelligan, who plays Mina. She's
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I lost my thought. I was going to say something and I lost my thought. Gosh dang it. Okay. Um, oh, poot. I had a thought I was going to bring up, and now I forgot what it was. Dang it. Oh well. So oh, I hate when I lose my train of thought. So what are you working on now?
I do too. Oh, I'm working on the sequel to Fiona's Guardians.
How many
I'm
books are
about
going to be in there in
50,000.
the series?
Well, I guess three is a magical number, right?
Hmm.
So I may have to write three. But I'm 50,000 words into the sequel, book two,
Okay.
and we learn that Fiona has an older sister, someone who's a
Oh,
century older than her,
okay.
and nobody knew. Agrippina kept the mother of both
Sure.
kept that older one a secret, the firstborn, and this character, the firstborn, is a true monster, and be, be, and her and she as a result of her transformation, Agrippina, who was still a very young vampire herself, brutalized this woman who later became her firstborn vampire, if you
Sure.
will. And there was a lot of rage, a lot of trauma in this experience. And Agrippina even fails to name this vampire that she's just created. The
Okay.
only advice she gives her is running away is stay out of the sun. And then years later, we get hints of this creature, this monster that is attacking villagers or people in cities
Sure.
or whatever. And Agrippina, through her memoir, admits that's probably the first one I created. And then when Agrippina dies in the first book, um, that leaves Fiona particularly vulnerable because we have a sins of the sire law in vampire law that I've kind of
Okay.
created, where if you've been aggrieved or you are injured or insulted in some way, and you can't get restitution from the person who damaged you, well, you can go to their next closest relative,
Holy
and they will
crap.
be responsible.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in this scenario, the monster that Agrippina created, who's a century older than Fiona, is now going after Fiona for retribution.
I remembered what I was going to say. So, Dracula. Okay.
Yep.
So
Dracula.
in
Yeah.
Nashville, they did a ballet of Dracula. And I thought, I
Yeah.
remember I went with my friend because we both love Gothic horror. And I remember thinking, how the hell are you going to turn Dracula into a ballet? If it ever comes to you, buy tickets
Yeah.
because they did this
I
thing
will.
where he had this massive cape, right? And it was very much a prop for him when he would be dancing around and sort. Okay. And so I kept thinking, well, how are they going to show like biting someone or like killing Lucy and that kind of stuff? They did this thing where when he would bite somebody, I don't know where he pulled that out of, but this red like scarf would go flying out of his hand, right? And then when
Oh, wow.
oh, it was, and I mean, we're talking like
Yeah.
long scarf, right? Not like a little scarf, but it was this very dramatic, flowing thing. And then when he kills Lucy, he drags her from one side of the stage to the other with this massive scarf and this red spotlight that follows them across. And
Oh,
I
wow.
remember going, that's how you do Dracula as a ballet. I strongly recommend anybody that has an opportunity because it was the coolest thing I have ever seen dance wise for something that how are you doing it? How do you do that? Is how it was
Yeah.
stunning. So
I will make a point looking
yes,
for that.
yes,
Yeah.
because it is absolutely Jessica and I both just sat here just mouth
Mm.
open at just that is incredible how you managed to do that because I just did not know what I was getting into because ballet is all, flowy and, and here's this very violent, and it was
Yeah.
beautiful. It was really cool.
I thank you for the recommendation. I will make a
Yes.
point
Because
of
if
seeing
it
it.
tours, you should absolutely go because I would love to know your thoughts on it if you see it because I just
Mm,
remember watching him and like you get to see just from his perspective through dance and it was just I literally wanted to go back in and rewatch it.
well, I'll tell you what, Lindsay. If when I do see it, I will. I promise to review it on Van
Okay.
Chat with Dan and Eva.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I thoroughly
Mhm.
enjoyed it and it was something unexpected that we went in more out of morbid curiosity, like, how the hell are you going to
Mm.
take something as frou-frou as a ballet and do Dracula where he
Right.
kills, but it was dark and
Mm.
really elegant how they did it. I like you
Mm.
could tell they really thought how that was going to look and it was very cool.
Oh wow. Yeah. Oh, you've got me intrigued.
Well, we get to see Sleeping Beauty in February, and I have wanted to see Sleeping Beauty my entire life, and I have never
Is that
had the
right?
opportunity. Yes, like I have on my shoulder, that's Maleficent, and I got the Three Fairies. Like it is, I have
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
soundtrack on vinyl. I have like at least three covers of the movie. Like it is my favorite Disney story ever a
Oh
lot
yeah.
because I
Oh.
know that the backgrounds were hand drawn in the cartoon, and I have
Mm.
always wanted to see
Hmm.
it as a ballet. So when I missed it the first time that came around, and so I just have been following Nashville Ballet for probably a decade. Just like I
Okay.
know it's coming, I know it's coming, I know you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it, and literally the day that they announced it was coming, I'm like, okay, tickets go on sale at this time. I'm gonna set an alarm, and literally the day the tickets went on
Yeah.
sale, done, going. So I'm super pumped. I'm finally going to get to see it, and I'm so ready.
No, I'm thrilled for you. Yeah. No, I look forward to hearing about it.
Oh,
In our conversations in the
for
future.
sure,
So
for sure.
yeah.
Well, we're
Yeah.
out of time, and I so
Hmm.
appreciate that you took time on your Sunday morning to sit down with me
Oh.
and I know we haven't met in person, but I cannot wait to meet you. So if you guys are listening, we're doing AuthorCon March 8th and 9th in Smyrna, Tennessee, and Dan is going to be a guest speaker as well as a podcast interviewee. I'm really excited. So
I
definitely
am too.
come. Oh, I can't wait. Definitely come.
Hmm.
Tickets are on sale on our website, thespinebookshop.com. So please make sure that you get your tickets. We're going to have so much fun. Dana is going to be speaking about one of his books, DIY promo. Is that right?
DIY book promo, how
That's
to
it.
find readers without spending money.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. But yes, AuthorCon is on March 8th and 9th here in Smyrna, Tennessee. We're going to have 30 plus authors, 10 vendors, costume contest, giveaways, panels, speakers, a live podcast interview with Dan and Reagan Claire. It's going to be so much fun. And I hope you guys come. And thank you so much for tuning
Oh
in to
yeah.
another episode of the Spine Bookcast. And Dan, thank you so much for sitting down and hanging out with me.
It's been a real pleasure, Lindsay, and I can't wait to meet you in person at
I
the
know.
AuthorCon on
I'm
March
so
8th.
excited. So excited. All right, you guys have a
All
great
right.
day. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.